So, guys, last season our defense was dead last, and this offseason, even after making changes, we were still seeing some real issues pop up during minicamp and OTAs. Well, Adam Peters clearly wasn't willing to wait around and see how that plays out, because he just went out and signed a veteran cornerback, and the timing on this could not have been more perfect. This move alone tells you the front office is paying attention, and honestly, it might not even be the last one they make to fix this secondary. So, let's get into what this actually means for our team heading into camp. What's up, Commanders Nation? Welcome to the NFL Playbook, Commanders. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Alright, so let's welcome our new commander, Rasul Douglas, a veteran cornerback. He's coming off a season with the Dolphins where he started 13 games, and he's signing here on a one-year deal, worth up to $8 million. Douglas was actually a third-round pick back in 2017, went to the Eagles, and actually won a Super Bowl with them that same year, which is kind of a fun little detail. Since then, he's bounced around Panthers, Packers, Bills, and now the Dolphins, and through all of that, he's put up 21 career interceptions. That is not a small number for a corner. That tells you this is a guy who has consistently found the football over almost a decade in this league. He even got seasons with 5 interceptions, 4 interceptions multiple years like that, and last year with Miami, he actually had one of his better stretches, grading out at 72.7 on Pro Football Focus, which for a starting outside corner is a solid, dependable number. He also picked up an AFC Defensive Player of the Week nod last season after a big game against the Jets, so this isn't a guy who's just hanging on, he's still making real plays out there. Even this is interesting, how he actually got that role in Miami. He wasn't even the starter to begin with, he was behind a couple other guys, and once an injury opened the door for him in week 1, he took the job and never really let go of it. That's the kind of story that tells you a little bit about the competitor you're bringing in here. This isn't a guy who needs to be handed a role, he's shown he can earn one when the opportunity shows up. Now here's where it gets interesting for us. If you look at our cornerback room right now, you've got Trey Amos, who is basically the guy, assuming he's fully healthy coming off his injury. You've got Mike Sainristil, who the team clearly believes in since they used an early pick on him, and he's flashed outside ability already. Amik Robertson is more of your slot piece. Honestly, he's not really competing for this outside job, and after that, who do you actually have? That's the exact question a lot of us were asking all offseason, and I think that's precisely the gap Douglas is walking into. Now, I don't think anybody in that front office is sitting there thinking Douglas is walking in and taking Trey Amos' job. That's not what this is about. This is competition. This is insurance. This is exactly what you want in a room where you've got a guy coming back from a significant injury and another guy who's still trying to prove he can hold down a starting outside role over a full 16-game season. If Amos needs an extra week or two before he's fully trusted out there, you don't have to force it now, because you've got a legitimate veteran option sitting right behind him. And if Sainristil struggles on the outside like he did at times last year, you're not stuck throwing a rookie or a practice squad guy in there and hoping for the best. You've got a guy with 93 career starts who has done this exact job successfully for almost a decade. And I think that's the part that stands out to me the most, the fact that this coaching staff is essentially saying, we are not comfortable enough with what we have to just roll into camp and hope it works out. That right there tells you something about how this staff is thinking. They're not going to throw a young guy out there and just cross their fingers hoping he figures it out on the fly anymore, not after everything we've watched happen in that secondary over the last few seasons. Physically, Douglas is a big corner, 6'2", right around 200 pounds, and that actually matters here because look at the rest of this room. Trey Amos is a bigger body too, and if you remember, this coaching staff has been pretty clear they want length and size at this position, especially in a division where you're dealing with big physical receivers on a weekly basis. So, bringing in another 6'2" corner isn't random, that's a pattern. That's this front office building a specific type of room on purpose, not just collecting bodies. Now let's talk about what he actually brings on tape, because I think this matters just as much as the resume. He's more of a zone corner, he plays a lot of off coverage. He's not the fastest guy anymore if he ever really was blazing to begin with, but what he does really well is read routes and get his hands on the football. Last year alone, he had 2 interceptions and 13 pass breakups, and the year before that with Buffalo, he had similar production. He's not going to shut a guy down and erase him for 4 quarters. That's just not his game anymore at this stage of his career, but he is going to be around the football. And honestly, for a defense that has struggled to create takeaways, that alone is valuable. One thing that actually works in his favor here is the scheme. This isn't a defense that's asking corners to press and jam receivers at the line every single snap. It's more based on route reading and jumping throws, so a guy like Douglas, who's had some struggles when asked to press in the past, isn't being put in a position where his biggest weakness gets exposed over and over. That's the kind of scheme fit that actually matters more than people give it credit for. I also think there's something to be said for what a guy like this does in a room with Daronte Jones running things. Jones wants disciplined players who understand where they fit in a scheme. And a guy entering his 10th season like Douglas is exactly the type of guy who's seen enough different systems and enough different quarterbacks that he can step in, communicate, and help some of these younger guys, whether that's Sainristil. Whether that's some of the younger safeties like Nick Cross or Quan Martin, understand coverages a little faster. Veteran presence matters in a room, and I think that gets overlooked sometimes when we're just talking about box scores and grades. Now, is this a move that changes the outlook of this entire defense on its own? No, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, but I do think it changes the floor. It changes what happens if something goes wrong. And if we've learned anything the last couple years around here, it's that things do go wrong, guys get hurt, young players take longer to develop than we'd like, and having a proven veteran option sitting there ready to go is exactly the kind of death piece that keeps a bad month from turning into a lost season. I also want to point out the timing of this signing because I don't think that's an accident either. This isn't a March move. This isn't even a May move. This is right before training camp, which tells me the front office was watching how things were actually playing out on the practice field during minicamp and OTAs, saw something that concerned them enough, and decided to go get a solution instead of hoping it fixed itself. That's the kind of proactive decision-making that honestly we haven't always seen from this organization in years past, and I think that's a really encouraging sign going into this season. So when I put this all together, I think you're looking at a cornerback room headed into camp that goes Trey Amos and Mike Sainristil as your projected outside starters. Amik Robertson locked in at the slot, and now Rasul Douglas as legitimate experience, competition, and insurance behind all of them. That is a significantly different situation than what we were looking at even just a couple weeks ago, when the honest answer to who's your third or fourth corner was a lot murkier than anybody wanted to admit. I know some of you are going to say this isn't exciting enough. You wanted a big splashy move, maybe a younger guy, maybe a name that gets people buzzing on social media. I get that, but I think sometimes the smart, quiet move is exactly what a team needs, especially at a position where experience and football IQ genuinely matter as much as raw athletic ability. This is a front office looking at a real need, addressing it with a guy who has actually done the job at a high level for a long time, and doing it before problems show up in real games instead of after. And it's also worth mentioning, this move doesn't really touch what's happening at wide receiver, and I know a lot of you are still thinking about that side of the ball too. But that's a separate conversation for a separate video, because today this is strictly about what's happening on defense, and specifically in that back end. And look, the schedule doesn't wait around for this room to figure itself out either. We open the season on the road against the Vic Fangio defense in Philadelphia, and right after that we're stepping into a stretch of games against real, established passing offenses, not cupcake matchups. Having a guy like Douglas, who's actually started meaningful games against good competition recently, means he's not walking in cold. He's played under pressure in real games as recently as last season. That matters when week 1 rolls around and there's no more preseason reps to lean on. It's live bullets from the jump. So heading into training camp, keep an eye on how these reps get split up, because I think this competition is going to tell us a lot about how confident this staff really is in their younger corners. If Douglas starts getting real first-team reps early, that tells you something. If he's strictly a rotational veteran insurance piece from day one, that tells you something too. Either way, this defense just got a little bit deeper, a little bit more experienced, and honestly, a lot less fragile than it was a week ago. And for a defense that finished last season the way ours did, I think that is exactly the kind of move you have to feel good about. All right, guys, that is going to do it for this one. Let me know down in the comments how you're feeling about this signing, and whether you think Douglas ends up pushing for real playing time this year or settles in as pure depth. Until next time, Commanders Nation, I'll see you in the next one.